You are listening to TMBDOS. They must be destroyed on sight. Discussions of an adult nature, adult language, and spoilers for the films discussed are most likely. Still on board? Come on in. Enjoy your stay.
They must be destroyed on sight.
All right, we're back. It's They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, episode 112. And I'm your host, Lee. You're not only wrong, you're wrong at the top of your voice, Russell. And I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel. Gonna kill you with no hard feelings, Harper. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. And that line, you're not just wrong, you're wrong at the top of your voice. That is one of the great lines in history, I think.
I totally agree. I think we're going to talk about a lot of how this is kind of maybe the best movie ever in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But anyway, we are going to be talking about Bad Day at Black Rock, and we're still technically in our classic Western series, but this is sort of a bridge. This is classic Western and classic noir at the same time. It's kind of both things, right?
It's kind of both, and then simultaneously neither. That's something we'll probably get into a little bit more as we go on. But
as Sherlock Holmes would say, this movie is very singular. Yeah. But yeah, before we get to that, we do have a little bit of housekeeping to get through. We do have one comment to get to here, and this is a negative comment from one of our YouTube versions of our podcast. This is from our Big Sleep episode, and this is from Antipodino. And he said, "Sorry, not here for Deadpool. You lost me after a few minutes." And essentially, I think we got into what we were watching at that time. And
right.
One of us talked about Deadpool. It was probably me or you.
We probably, I think at that time we had seen it a
Yeah.
couple of weeks apart or something, so we got to talking about it a bit. And yeah, well.
So he couldn't last for 10 minutes about us talking about Deadpool and then get into the episode, so he just totally tuned out.
Yeah, well, you know. Yeah. I actually think the Big Sleep episode is one of the best ones we ever did. So I would say it's his loss. Ultimately,
it is his loss.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, Antipodino.
And then all you had to do was just skip ahead, right?
Exactly.
Like if you're sitting at a computer or on your phone or whatever, listening to a podcast, and you don't like the bit at the beginning where we chat, just skip. I do it all the time. Come on.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Antipodino, you are the epitome of stupid YouTube commenter. Because
he didn't use a racial slur, so at least we got it.
Well,
he gets above the the real scum suckers on YouTube. You know,
he didn't say like screw you bunch of N-words or screw you faggot or whatever. You know, not the usual YouTube kind of delivery. But here's the thing. He's very much of the same mindset of basically all YouTube viewers that are on the lower level, on the lower tier. They don't read the fucking show notes. They don't read the fucking description. In the description, I say, we talk about what we've watched as of late before we get into the reviews. So he was warned. He just did not do his due diligence to,
Well, and I feel like there's this sense, which YouTube is designed for so many people with immediate gratification. Where it's like, oh, this is longer than long. I don't care anymore. Go, That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, there's
he
a major
self-selected himself out of our podcast listenership, and you know what? Fuck that guy.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
Who cares?
Because and here's the thing: he's not going to listen to this episode, obviously. So fuck you.
Yeah. We should tag him in the show notes. Random YouTube commenter guy.
I
talked about you.
Yeah, I plan on responding to him on the YouTube version of this. So
okay.
It's going to be much more nasty than what we said here.
Fair enough. I mean, I'm sure his mom likes him, but
I don't know. I don't think that guy had a mother. But anyway, that was the only comment we had. So we'll move on to what we've watched in the last little while, and I'll throw it to you first, Daniel.
Sure. This is just a rewatch, and I don't take this too seriously. I was flipping channels on, I think, New Year's Eve, and Austin Powers, the first Austin Powers film, was on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I haven't watched this in like 10 years, probably longer, 15 years maybe. Let's give it a shot. And dear God, is that movie a piece of shit. Remember that time when we all just kind of thought Mike Myers was like kind of clever and interesting, and he was kind of broad, but at least he had there was a sense in which he was doing something clever with the material. And I don't know if it's just having absorbed so many of those 60s films now that I hadn't at the time, or if it's just like, my God, you're making the most obvious jokes ever, or if it's just sort of the modern day kind of knowledge of who Mike Myers has become just sort of like infects everything. But my God, that movie is so fucking awful. It is just the most hackneyed one-note piece of shit.
And I used to like that film too, but I mean, on
rewatch,
rewatch, I totally agree. It doesn't work. None of them work.
First one is probably the best.
Yeah.
The second one, was kind of bigger budget and, kind of had... But by the third one, they're just going back to the same well over and over and over again. And it's the third one is actively awful. Like, even on a... I think maybe in like 96, there was just this sense that nobody was really doing this at that time. And there's some kind of visual, kind of humor behind it. And Elizabeth Hurley is cute and like she's really good. I like her in the film. But I mean, the worst thing they ever did was cast Mike Myers. I mean, honestly, I was reading on the Wikipedia page, and the original plan was they were trying to get Jim Carrey to play Dr. Evil.
Really?
Yeah, and so it would have been kind of a Jim Carrey, Mike Myers vehicle at that point. Ironically, I think Mike Myers is better as Dr. Evil than he is as Austin Powers. Mm-hmm. And I think that casting it'd be interesting to do sort of a let's do the 60s spy genre today with we have a more sophisticated, kind of mass appeal towards satire. I mean, in fact, the Get Smart movie with Steve Carell is sort of a better version of kind of what Austin Powers
it's actually way better. I enjoyed that a lot more.
I saw that theatrically and really enjoyed it. I haven't seen it since it was in theaters, but that was a movie that was way better than it had any right to be.
Well, I'm trying to think who you would put in the Austin Powers role. If you took Mike Myers and just made him Dr. Evil,
right?
Who would I cast at that point?
I mean, there's the obvious. Just make it Pierce Brosnan.
Well. that might work. That might work. Man.
I mean, I think the thing for me is, and I keep thinking about it, but I think the thing for me is like it has so little to say about the 60s.
Yeah,
it really doesn't have anything to say about. I mean, it's not even really about the movies. It's just sort of like referencing them visually and kind of doing.
It's all artifice. It's purely artifice. Yeah.
But it's like the whole point of like we've brought this guy back from the 60s, and he's this kind of free love guy, and he's going into the modern era, and then basically like the whole thing is he ends up in this like hectoring mommy relationship with the daughter of his former love interest, which is like kind of super creepy in and of itself. But it's also it's not really about kind of interrogating that idea of like what does a 60s free love super spy guy kind of respond to in the 90s. It's just sort of like, oh, look, now we don't say these things anymore.
Yeah, and they do nothing with it anyway, because at the end it ends up Vanessa's a fembot, so it's like, what the fuck?
Right. Well, at least that's the beginning of the second movie. We can just pretend that doesn't exist.
Yeah, I pretend none of these movies exist at this point, honestly. But
I just saw it on and I went, oh, this will be like a fun like thing to just sit and watch for a little while. And God, I turned it off after the a lot of vagina scene. Like that was this sort of, I kind of got that far that I went, now the rest is just, we're just going to run around in the basement.
Yeah.
Which was tiresome even on a first watch. It really is like a 6-minute SNL sketch, extended to, and
that's what it feels like now. It feels like an SNL movie, like a bad SNL movie, Wayne's World was good, but this is just, no.
Well, We should definitely do the Wayne's World movies at some point. Those are legitimately good movies. You know?
We should do
also,
those.
So I Married an Axe Murderer. That's a legitimately decent flick too. You know.
Yeah. I'd be into that. It's those movies. Again, you made a good point. Seeing so many just watching all kinds of shit from the '60s now, it's all artifice. All those movies depend on the fact that the audience has no knowledge of movies from the '60s at all. They're trying to pretend that they're informing you on tropes of the '60s that don't necessarily even exist. And I'll just mention, I don't know if it's available on American Netflix, but on Canadian Netflix right now, Our Man Flint is streaming on Netflix. Go watch that instead of fucking Austin Powers. That's the better parody, quote unquote, of the James Bond kind of stuff.
I think we should do a 60 spy movie series at some point, because I've watched a few of them now. I've seen Our Man Flint, and what's the sequel? There's another Flint movie.
Jesus, I don't.
Anyway, I've seen the thing is that like the spy movie sort of became an instant parody genre almost the second James Bond hit it big, and then people were making fun of James Bond within like 20 minutes of the movie ending. You know, the first time. Well, let's go make fun of that.
Well, I mean, we even did Rebus, and that's kind of a parody to a certain extent of that sort of genre.
It's a genre that's sort of designed to be sort of goofy and fun, but I mean, it just sort of, I don't know, the idea of taking the piss out of something that was sort of goofy and silly to begin with. I mean, it's clear that they loved the James Bond movies. You know, that's why they made it, but it is sort of like, you know, I don't know. It's just a piece of crap.
And it kind of feels they were almost vultures, where they were picking on the bones of the James Bond franchise at that point, where it was really in the dregs. You know, it was really going downhill. So let's capitalize on the fact that James Bond is really crap now, and let's really make fun of it. You know.
You know, I really wish. I mean, there was this story that Tarantino was trying to make a James Bond film, like around that time. Even this is when Tarantino, I think, well, a couple of years later, because it was after Jackie Brown, and he was like, I'm not even going to do it. It doesn't even have to be in continuity. I just want to do a James Bond film, and the Broccoli family just would not. They were just like, fuck that, you know? Which is, I mean, I understand for their like kind of protecting their property or whatever, but with all the terrible things in the James Bond franchise, to say, yeah, let's not let brilliant auteur filmmaker kind of have his go at it. You know, you let Casino Royale happen, the original Casino Royale, but you know, no, let's not. Because I think that would have been a fascinating look at that, you know.
That would have been way better than the later Pierce Brosnan stuff. I mean, come on. Really? You're a villain with diamonds embedded in his face, and like, come on, dude. This is just fuck off. Just fuck off. Just give it to somebody else and let them do something with it. I mean, honestly, I'm kind of excited by the idea that Daniel Craig is going to do another James Bond film. That kind of interests me quite a bit.
I'm a couple behind. I saw Quantum of Solace, and I haven't seen any of the ones after that. I think there are two that I haven't seen at this point.
Skyfall is fucking great.
I heard that Skyfall is really good. So, you know, I don't know. I've been, I had this like thing I was going to like start, because a bunch of the James Bond films are actually on Amazon Prime. And I'm an Amazon Prime member. So it was like, oh yeah, I can just sit and watch these, you know, kind of randomly. So, I watched the first, and we talked about it when I first watched it. But I need to get back to that maybe and watch a lot of these, and because I haven't seen a lot of the originals. Something to think about. In my copious free time, I'll go and watch all the James Bond movies. Right?
So I've got a couple things to mention here. Sure. First thing I'll mention is a movie called Remember from 2015. This is a Christopher Plummer and Martin Landau before he died.
Is it about the reattachment of a penis?
No, it's not. Okay. Remember. I get it. No, this is Adam E. Gowan a film, a Canadian director.
Oh, nice.
This was a pleasant surprise for me. I really enjoyed this. This is basically a movie about two, senior citizens at the end of their lives in a old folks home. Christopher Plummer's character has dementia, and he is being sent on a mission by Martin Landau's character to hunt down a Nazi war criminal and kill him, because both of these guys were in Auschwitz and they know who this guy is. They found him out, and now he's being sent on a mission to hunt this guy down. He's under an assumed name, so he has to go all over the U.S. and Canada to find this guy, because there's several different people under this name, so he has to confirm who the actual guy is.
Does he walk up to somebody's door and say, "Are you Sarah Connor"?
No, not quite.
Okay.
But it's
I'm sorry. This sounds really good. I'm not trying to make fun of it. I'm just
no. I appreciate it, but it's a very interesting film, man. It's basically it's a Nazi exploitation film in the sense that it's like a Nazi revenge film where let's kill the Nazis. Hey, already you got.
We're down with that, yeah.
Already you got to start.
It's very 2017, right? You know.
Yeah. But goddamn, I will just say for the record, this touched me emotionally in a way that it might not other people, because basically Martin Landau and Christopher Plummer play two sides of just basically what I went through with my grandfather. My grandfather suffered from dementia, and he also suffered from basically lung problems. Like he had to be on a breather all the time and shit like that. So I know both of these things very in depth, and both of these performances are fucking amazing. Just so true to what it's like. Christopher Plummer's performance of early onset Alzheimer's or whatever is very on point. It's very much real. Martin Landau, the way he coughs, he's acting this the way he coughs, but it's so fucking authentic of just someone who's suffering from that. So both of these guys already, they gave me kind of a bare pass on this movie just from their performances altogether. But this is just really interesting because Christopher Plummer, he's suffering from dementia, so he forgets. Every time he wakes up, he forgets shit. So he has this letter that Martin Landau wrote out for him. Your wife has died. So the promise was made after his wife died. He would go on this mission to hunt this Nazi war criminal down. So the letter starts, your wife has died, and here's the whole story. Here's what you have to do. Cross off everything you've done on this letter so far so you can, reference everything and just keep going on. So you have to sort of buy into the fact that this dementia suffering senior citizen has managed to get out of his old folks' home and go across country and do this shit. I mean, you have to sort of buy into that. But the performance is so goddamn good, and there's this amazing fucking twist in this film. I will say it kind of kills a rewatch to a certain degree. Yeah. But there is an amazing fucking twist in this. It's a great revenge film. It's incredibly sad and horrific at the same time. And it's already on my best of list for 2018 first time watches.
Awesome.
So
it sounds like, and this is not meant to be like insulting in the slightest, it sounds like the kind of film that has a twist. And I'm not going to try to predict what the twist is. If you say it's effective, then it's probably not any of the three I'm thinking of, the really cheesy bad kinds of twists. But it sounds really good, and I definitely am going to put that on my list to watch. Have you seen a film called Yuli's Gold?
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
It's been literally 20 years since I've seen it. I saw it.
Isn't that Peter Fonda?
Peter Fonda, yeah. He's an apiarist, a beekeeper, in I think Florida. And the whole thing is like his kind of shitbird son gets involved in some crime bullshit. I forget the details because it's been 20 years, but it is kind of about this old man having to kind of become a badass again. I don't know. The description just sort of kind of made me think of that a little bit. So
Christopher Plummer doesn't necessarily become a badass in this. Again, he reminds me of our grandfather.
Right. It's less. I'm kind of, but he has to kind of find the inner reserves to, to kind of deal with the situation.
But I will say the inner reserves are part of the twist as well.
Yeah. Well, don't say anything else. I think this is a we need to possibly discuss it. Although whenever we talk about that, we still haven't done Mystery Road. Which was one that I know we had talked about doing a while back. But what was the other thing you were going to talk about there, Lee?
Okay, so another one I watched, Once Upon a Time in Venice from 2017. This is just a Bruce Willis movie. Okay, so
Because when you think Venice,
well, this is like Venice, California, or whatever, like Venice.
oh
Beach or
well,
some
yeah,
shit.
sure, yeah, okay.
It's not Europe.
No gondolas in this.
No gondolas. So first off, I'll just ask you briefly, what's your opinion of Bruce Willis?
He's often good and often in shit. And that's those two things are not mutual. Those are not two separate Venn diagram kind of concepts, right? You know, he's often good in shit. He's often in stuff that's good, where he's shit. He seems like a total asshole when he wants to be,
right,
and not an asshole at other times. You know, I mean, you kind of listen to people who've worked with him, and you know, he's kind of all over the map. I'm a fan of Bruce Willis. I mean, Bruce Willis is a big part of my, you know, kind of upbringing and just sort of my, I like Bruce Willis, but I don't like go and see like everything he's in or anything. But I tend to like him as an actor more than I don't.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. I like Bruce Willis. I think he's really talented, and I think he's also a really lazy asshole at the same time, as far as a lot of the stuff he does. Here, he's actually kind of good. You know, he's having fun with this. This is basically it kind of depends on your love of him in Pulp Fiction to a certain degree.
Right. And I do love him in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
so, I mean,
so there's all this sort of Dick Dale-ish surf music in the background of the movie for the entire thing. It's like, remember in Pulp Fiction, Bruce Willis? Yeah, 20 years ago. But at the same time, Bruce Willis seems to be having fun with this. He's basically this sort of stunted, hasn't grown up kind of private detective guy. He still skateboards. His stunt double is nude for half of this film, basically. And to hammer that point home, John Goodman is in this film as well as the sidekick. So
let me just tell. I don't know how much this is going to come through for the audience, but you broke up for me a little bit in your discussion of that, from naked stunt guy on the skateboard, and then the next thing I heard was Bowski and John Goodman is in this, and so. I feel like I know exactly what this movie is, and I feel like it's a get fairly inebriated and enjoy kind of.
It's exactly that. It's a film where it sort of just depends on you knowing that John Goodman was in The Big Lebowski and Bruce Willis was in Pulp Fiction. Let's mash those two movies together. Hey, Jason Momoa is in it. He's Aquaman now.
He's good.
Yeah, and he's good in this. He's good as just like sort of comical.
I love John Goodman. I mean, John Goodman is a genius.
John Goodman's so underrated. He's a great fucking actor, and he's great in this. Honestly, he steals this entire movie, especially in the last half of this movie. He just totally fucking steals it away from Bruce Willis. He just totally takes it away from him. That was the most entertaining part of this movie. It's like the second half of it, where John Goodman just sort of takes over and just goes crazy. I just kind of feel like John Goodman just sort of improvised all this shit. He's just like, fuck the script. I'm just going to fucking say whatever the fuck I want. And I think Bruce Willis kind of does that in every movie anyway. Because he got away with it in Die Hard. He improvised a lot of stuff in Die Hard. It was such a big success where all of a sudden people just won't say no to Bruce Willis anymore.
Right. And now I kind of want to do like some of the 90s questionable Bruce Willis choices movies.
But this is, as far as, direct to video or direct to Netflix kind of shit for Bruce Willis, this is pretty decent, although there's some very glaring ADR moments where we need Bruce Willis to say these lines, and Bruce Willis is like, fuck that, I'm not coming back to say these lines.
you can like hear the cell phone chatter in the background. They just got him on the Skype, and he's yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Yeah, no, it's not even that good. It's just some guy who doesn't sound anything like Bruce Willis saying these lines, but it's kind of fun. The only other one I'll mention is Crimson Peak from 2015, the Guillermo del Toro film. I finally got around to watching this. Really loved it. It's Tim Burton on crack.
Well, that's Guillermo del Toro's career.
Yeah, but I mean,
Tim Burton on acid, or Tim Burton on some kind of drug that makes it a lot better.
Yeah, visually, this movie's great. Like, it's a really good ghost story. Visually, it's pretty fucking amazing. The performances are all good. It's kind of like a throwback. It's basically Victorian era, but it's got all the trappings of gothic horror. It feels like a Hammer movie that just was never made, and I liked it. I like the ghosts in it. Maybe some of the effects are a little bit too CGI at times, but although they did use a lot of practical effects for the ghosts, they actually had people physically as actors playing the ghosts on set, and they just did some like CGI enhancements or whatever for the actual film. I'm looking forward to seeing his Shape of Water or whatever it is that just came out.
Yeah, no, that one looks really interesting. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely down for that.
But yeah, Crimson Peak, Canadian Netflix at least just showed up, and if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth seeing. I was
probably better than Crimson Tide.
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
Just a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah, so we'll just go to a quick break for some podcasts that we listen to and love, and maybe a little bit of music, and we'll be back to talk about Bad Day at Black Rock.
You ungodly warlock.
Badasses, Boobs, and Body Counts is a weekly podcast that discusses all things grindhouse, exploitation, drive-in, and B-movies. Your three hosts, Mike.
We're going to discuss the Rene Martinez directed picture, The $6,000.
Wait, whoa.
That's the name of the movie.
Super Soul Brother.
That's the name.
When you start
Look
the movie,
at your DVD cover.
when you start the movie, the first thing that
That's
comes
what it
up is the
says.
title, and it says
$6,000.
Mark.
And I've been around a girl stroking a horse's dick.
Somehow, somewhere down the line, I'm going to use that clip against you.
Shh. Do it. Please do.
And listener favorite Iris.
The deployment sock. And I'm like, deployment sock? What the fuck is a deployment sock? He goes, you know that sock that you just use? Oh my God, you guys are so gross. See, so it happens for real. People do come in socks.
Will make you question your political correctness while laughing at theirs. Episodes drop Sunday and can be found by searching for BB and BC Podcast via iTunes, Libsyn, Stitcher, Google Play Music, and everywhere else you can download quality podcasts from. You can also listen to episodes directly from the show's website at bbnbcpodcast.com.
Howdy, folks. Like blood, violence, freaks and
Then you come to the right place. My name is Gary, and I'm your guide to Cinema Beef Podcast. Every episode, we not only deliver film reviews, we also dismantle some of your favorite and most hated films. Sometimes for the better, and sometimes for the worse.
Hey, you shut your face! If we want to hear you talk, I will shove my arm up your ass and work your mouth like a puppet.
Alright, calm down. Every show I hope to have a new co-host, podcasters and listeners alike. That's right, I'm talking to you people. I take all comers.
You're slapped.
That's not very nice. The only rules, well, let's ask the best cooler in the business.
All you have to do is follow 3 simple rules. 1, never underestimate your opponent. Expect the unexpected. 2, take it outside. Never start anything inside the bar unless it's absolutely necessary. And 3, be nice.
So join the insanity and please vent your frustrations. I'm available on TalkShoe, iTunes, and Stitcher Smart Radio. Remember, here at the Cinema Beef Podcast, if you got beef, I've got the grinder.
You ungodly warlock.
All right, now we're going to talk about Bad Day at Black Rock from 1955.
Towns like this in America, but one town like it is enough. And because I think something kind of bad happened here, something they can't quite seem to find a handle to.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I know this much. The rule of law has left here and the guerrillas have taken over.
Somebody's always looking for something in this part of the West. This place is our West, and I wish they'd leave us alone. I swear you're beginning to make me mad.
All strangers do.
Well, they don't. No. Some do when they come around snooping.
Looking for what?
I don't know. Outsiders coming in looking for something.
Looking for what?
I don't know.
4 years ago, something terrible happened here. We did nothing about it. Nothing. Now something terrible's going to happen again. They're going to kill you with no hard feelings.
What does he say? Who is this guy anyway?
Never heard of him, that's what he says. He checked and there's no John J. McCready. No listing, no record, no information, nothing.
Nobody like McCready can raise a pretty big stink. The point is, who'd miss a nobody like McCready if he just, say, disappeared?
Thought it'd be better if you went out there and got done with it. What can he find out?
This is liable to be the hardest $10 you ever earned in your life.
I suppose 4 years from now you'll be sitting around here telling people you haven't forgotten me either. That's real progress. In the meantime, I'll be as dead as a... Why don't you tell me what happened?
directed by John Sturges, written by Millard Kaufman, Don McGuire, and Howard Breslin, starring Spencer Tracy as John J. McCready, Robert Ryan as Reno Smith, Anne Francis as Liz Worth, Dean Jagger as Tim Horton, Walter Brennan as Doc Villay, John Erickson as Pete Worth, Ernest Borgnine as Coley Trimble, Lee Marvin as Hector David, Russell Collins as Mr. Hastings, and Walter Sandy as Sam. And we'll just get into a quick little synopsis here. From the time John J. McCready steps off the train in Black Rock, he feels a chill from the local residents. The town is only a speck on the map, and few, if any, strangers ever come to the place. McCready himself is tight-lipped about the purpose of his trip, and he finds that the hotel refuses him a room. The local garage refuses to rent him a car, and the sheriff is a useless drunkard. It's apparent that the locals have something to hide, but when he finally tells them that he is there to speak to a Japanese-American farmer named Komoko, he touches nerves so sensitive that he will spend the next 24 hours fighting for his life. And that is from Gary KMCD from IMDb, and I think that kind of does sort of summarize the premise quite well. And actually, I'll just go to you right away. Daniel, when's the first time you watched this, and what are your sort of general thoughts on it?
This is one that I knew by reputation for quite a while. This is one of Paul Thomas Anderson's favorite films, and it informed a lot of Boogie Nights in terms of the way he shot Boogie Nights, just kind of the compositional style. He mentions it a couple of times on the commentary track. Also, it features heavily, or at least it features in Martin Scorsese's kind of extended documentary about the history of cinema that he did, almost 20 years ago now. But, it features as sort of the birth of the kind of widescreen format. And, Martin Scorsese talked about it. So I knew by reputation for a while. Again, this is another one that I saw probably 10 years ago during that period when I was first kind of visiting a lot of these films for the first time and kind of like going to the effort to do my homework on these. And dear God, you fall in love with it, right? I mean, this is one that I knew by reputation, and even knowing it by reputation, it's kind of like, well, it's funny how little people talk about the story of it, in that sense. It's really just sort of like people talk about the visuals and I mean, the visuals are great. The sort of design of the film is amazing. I mean, you just watch the story. I rewatched it twice this week for the podcast. Once Monday and then once last night, just to sort of revisit it and then to kind of dig back down into it and kind of get another experience of it. And just Tracy's performance, it first seems, he is playing a man with a bad arm. He's taken shrapnel in Italy. It takes place just a few months after World War II, which would have been about 10 years before the film was made. So, you kind of, it's funny how a film made in 55 is actually set in 45. And, so you're kind of getting the way that people felt about that immediate post-war period. That's kind of a subtext of the film. But,
right.
At first it feels like, I think on our first watch, it felt a little bit like a mannerism heavy kind of performance in the sense of he's definitely drawing attention to the fact that he only has one arm. But there's also the sense of, there's actually like you can tell there's quite a bit of talent in terms of like striking a matchbook with, one arm. And late in the film, he makes a Molotov cocktail with one arm in his pocket. I mean, there's some definitely just a pleasure just from that element of the performance. I love that you don't really know what he's after. You don't really know who he is. I mean, he's a mystery to us as much as he is to the other people in the film, to the people in Black Rock.
Right.
I love that you get this. You get several extended sequences with the kind of people of the town talking about this stuff. They're cagey. They're not really talking about what happened in a way that is both, keeps us in the dark while giving us information, but also, the way that real people would, kind of.
That's right, because they don't want to talk about the pink elephant in the room. They want to sort of jump around it, Yeah.
But I mean, I was kind of reminded, we watched like High Noon and 3:10 to Yuma, and then earlier we did Once Upon a Time in the West, and you think about like the gang of toughs who just kind of stand around, and they, here we actually spend a lot of time with like kind of the bad guys. We spend a lot of time with these characters, and we kind of get to know who they are, at least in terms of broad caricature. I mean, but so there is a sense of what if in High Noon we just hung around with the three guys who are waiting on the leader of the gang,
right,
for half an hour. So that's a really interesting kind of dynamic going on. There are some great conversations in this movie. There's some great like back and forth that happen. And it all ends on this in a lot of ways, this kind of bittersweet ending. and in some ways it's sort of, it's very kind of the saddest happy ending possible in some ways. We really don't know what this town is really going to be like, and does this ever make any difference, what's really going on here. But it's a very simple film. It's only about an hour and 21 minutes long. It's a very short film, but it's got a lot of stuff buried in it. Again, this is one like Stagecoach. I think I said this last time. A lot of these films kind of feel like homework, and this doesn't feel. I mean, you watch this and it doesn't. I think most people who are interested enough to even kind of put it on will find it interesting enough to get involved in it. My wife enjoyed this. She did not enjoy Stagecoach. She watched Stagecoach with me, and I think the one thing she got out of it was one of the actors was the voice of one of the characters in Robin Hood. The Disney Robin Hood. That's as far as she got into it. But she was fine watching this twice with me. She was like, "Oh yeah, that's good. I like that.
I think this movie, I would be hard pressed to think of someone who would not be sucked into this. Honestly, it gives the appearance of a really kind of slow burn movie with nothing happening. And it is a slow burn movie, but a lot happens all the time. There's no fat on this picture at all. Everything leads to something. From the get-go, there's just this intense tension built because MacReady comes in and you don't know what he's about. The townspeople have a secret that's immediately apparent, and you don't know what the fucking secret is. And that the townspeople are just frightened that MacReady might be connected to that to some degree. And they're immediately trying to push him out of this town. They're doing their best to intimidate him.
It's a town with a secret. They know what they did. And I mean, it is... I mean, the film doesn't really push on this, but there's certainly kind of an element of, the whole... And I mean, spoiler alert. This town of people, they murdered the one Japanese-American guy who lived in this town right after Pearl Harbor. And that's sort of what we find out in the film. And that's kind of the big secret that they're keeping. So many little towns have a buried history like that. Maybe not to this degree to where everybody just kind of agreed to cover it up, right? We're just going to pretend we don't know, or we're going to kind of look the other way. That's sort of what the lawman of the town, the sheriff of the town, has just decided to, we just don't ask too many questions about what really happened there. But there is, I mean, every little town, so many little towns, I'm not going to say every little town, but so many little towns have ghost stories in the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
I saw some ethnographers who had gone through and kind of looking at some of these ghost stories and kind of looked at, and you start asking enough questions and you start kind of piecing together through old. And a lot of them have there's a real history, and it's usually some labor movement, the old factory was burned down by the Pinkertons, or, there was some massacre that happened or something like that. And this is just sort of the nature of America. This is the nature of how we choose to forget our history in some ways, is that, the kind of the ghosts of the past, infect the present. There's an extended metaphor, not too extended, but there is an extended metaphor about that MacReady's coming in and he's going to be the cure for this disease that ails the town.
Right.
Because he's this infection, and he's made the town sick because he's suddenly this, outside agitator, which, I mean, in 55 has a very particular meaning as well, One criticism of this film is that for a film that's ultimately about how bad racism is, there are no non-white people in the film.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't get to see either Kamoko in the film, for instance, or any of the other characters.
Honestly, that's kind of my only sort of sticking point with this film at all. And at the same time, I say that understanding the atmosphere that this film must have been under, at the time it was made. John Sturges is making a film here that it would not be politically smart to just outright having a Japanese man murdered on screen.
Right.
Yeah.
They could have put Mickey Rooney in that Breakfast at Tiffany's movie.
Oh, Jesus Christ. No. Jesus, man. But I mean, and I think John Sturges is honestly, he's recognized as kind of a more of a progressive director at that time, who had to work within the
studio did not like the implications of this film.
Right.
And I really, pretty much any film where the studio did not like the implications of this film is probably a pretty good film.
Yeah. So, I mean, he had to work within certain constraints here. And as much as I would like it to talk more about sort of the Japanese internment and all that stuff, he touches on it enough to get the point
compare it. The Searchers is made the very next year, and The Searchers gets so much credit for being the great movie about race in this period. And The Searchers is fucking awful. I mean, it's a masterpiece, but it's also fucking awful. Like, let's just, it's so it makes so many errors of its own. Where I think we've decided on this podcast to never actually do a review of the Searchers.
Yeah, I don't want to touch it.
It's just not worth getting into. But Bad Day at Black Rock is kind of, you understand the constraints that Sturges is under, and like they make the decisions they have to make. It's just sort of, again, from a modern viewpoint, it's easy to kind of point at that, and so it's worth kind of at least highlighting. That is just kind of the era this film is made in. You can't kind of blame it necessarily for that.
You talk about no people of any sort of other ethnicity except for white in this.
Yeah,
kind of makes sense at the same time, because this is this isn't even really a town. Like this is like 3 buildings around a train track.
Yeah, a lot of these towns basically existed to be. This is supposed to be. Where is this supposed to be? I think it's in Arizona, right?
Something. Yeah.
The actual town, and this is something I'll just. My wife grew up in a little town called Leona Valley, California, and this reminded her exactly of where she grew up. Like she was just, she felt, I think, legitimately homesick watching the film, because even though we looked up exactly where it was shot, and it was a couple of hours from where she grew up, but in that same general area. This is very like that sort of like very like Southern California desert is where this is shot. But it's kind of standing in for some generic middle of fucking nowhere kind of,
Right.
The reason this exists is because there's some farmland and they need like a spur to, take you somewhere else on the road,
The whole town itself is actually just constructed. Like they found a railroad location somewhere where it crossed, and they just like, okay, we'll build our set around this railroad.
Yeah.
It's actually Lone Pine, California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you go back in time and knock down one of the trees, it becomes Twin Pines. Sorry. It's joke.
Jesus Christ.
Set in 1955, all right. Come on.
Yeah. I watched this for the first time in 2016, and I put it in my best of list for that year. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't love this film.
Yeah.
Unequivocally, it's fucking great. Spencer Tracy apparently he was a real dick on the set, and he was known for being.
This was during his deep alcoholism period,
Yeah.
You know the difference between a good time on set and a bad time on set for Spencer Tracy. Movies of this era, if Katharine Hepburn was around.
Yeah.
She was they didn't marry, but she was effectively like his spouse.
And she called him on his shit all the time.
Well, she called him on his shit, but she also took care of him. And she she would go and bitch out directors. Sorry, I hate to use the gendered language there, but she would go and yell at directors and make sure that they were giving the big star, this man that she loved, Spencer Tracy, the space that he needed to kind of take care of himself and, to kind of be the best person he could be. So there's a lot of films of this era, when you see Tracy and Hepburn together, that's how there's like a real camaraderie on set.
Yeah.
Here, he kind of got kind of bullied into doing this. They sort of the reason
he didn't want to do it. Yeah.
In the film was because the producer was like, yeah. Any actor will give his left arm to play a crip,
Well, apparently Spencer Tracy had to be sort of prodded into this, right? Because he didn't want to do it, and this was his last film contractually for was it MGM or MGM. This was the last one he did, except for narration for How the West Was Won in '62.
Yeah.
But he didn't want to do it, and they were like, okay, well, we sent the script to Alan Ladd, and Alan Ladd will fucking do it. And apparently that kind of got his goat up a little bit. But yeah, Spencer Tracy here, the acting here.
You don't quite know where we're used to these films in which, these kind of Western films in which it's like two tough. Basically, the Western genre is built on two tough guys staring at each other,
right?
Until there's a shootout at the end. That's the that's the Western genre in a nutshell. Well, here you got your big antagonist,
Robert Ryan.
He basically just talks his way into a room. He just sort of takes a hotel room. Robert Ryan, he decides he's going to just see how tough he is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he tests him. He tests him, doesn't he? Like throughout the whole film, he tests him. He sends his guys against him. He spars with them verbally, and he's just like testing, like, what does this guy know? What is he going to do? Is he going to be a problem for me?
And the thing is, he doesn't know anything. Like, he
Yeah.
walks in, he knows nothing. He's a nobody. He's just some guy, you know?
Yep.
But, I mean, Robert Ryan, like, he's challenging him. He's basically like, well, I'm going to take your room, and if you're a real man, you
That's Lee Marvin in that.
Oh, is that Lee Marvin? All right.
Yeah, Lee Marvin's like, oh god, and Lee Marvin's so fucking good.
My favorite thing, one of my favorite things in the film is just watching Lee Marvin stand in this film.
God damn, yeah.
Thing with his, like, he's got his boots kind of up.
Is he not like the bad version of Clint Eastwood, basically, in this movie?
Yeah.
Like he's the Clint Eastwood who's a piece of shit.
Yeah, the 2017 Clint Eastwood as opposed to the 1967 Clint Eastwood. He's like the real life Clint Eastwood. You're like today, you know, just kind of an asshole. You know? Yeah, no, I love that sequence where they are kind of testing his metal, and then when Spencer Tracy, like, he rents a car from Anne Francis.
Yep.
Who is lovely and isn't in enough of this film, but what she's in is quite good. You know, he drives up there and he kind of puts it together. He's like, oh, burned out shack. There's a grave here. And then when he comes back, he's kind of has this conversation like, oh, man, there are wildflowers growing out there. And, you know, that's got to be a grave. I mean, it couldn't possibly be human because there's no marker there. So, I mean, clearly,
right.
You know, and it's such he knows, he's figuring it out. He knows fucking what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But he knows he's not really going to talk about it. He doesn't know who's going to be on his side. And in the end, he gets you know, it's like the sheriff who's, I mean, just a coward. I mean,
he's just a drunk coward. Yeah, and
the doctor, the local doctor, who is just kind of like, I'm here, I get him coming and going, and that's my job. You know,
I mean, the doctor, he's basically just been bullied into a corner, like, you know. He's not necessarily a coward, but he just has no recourse at all.
Well, he has no. I mean, he's just. He does what so many of us do, and just kind of accept the
status quo. It's just
status quo. It's just, well, what am I going to do if the sheriff isn't going to do anything? And I am I going to go and like kill all these guys? Am I going to
is he going to punch it out with fucking Ernest Borgnine? No, that's not going to happen.
Oh man, I love Ernest Borgnine in this film too.
You know? Yeah, no, but I mean, fuck. First off, Robert Ryan, he's just fucking pure evil in this film. Like, he's just so disgusting. Probably my favorite Robert Ryan performance, and that's saying something because I kind of exalt him as one of the all-time great actors.
What else is he in? I don't really know him from other
He's
stuff.
been in so many. He's in The Wild Bunch. He's the guy who hunts down the gang in The Wild Bunch.
Right.
That's the thing about this film. Everybody in it is somebody who's been in about a million other things. Like, you watch this film and you go, oh shit, fucking Robert Ryan. He's been in all these films. Ernest Borgnine, of course.
Like, so many of these people who have been in a bunch of other things, but like not like some big iconic like role.
Yeah, no, it's all character actor stuff here, right? Like, and I mean, Lee Marvin became a star, but at the same time, he's kind of a character actor at the same time, right?
Yeah. I mean, I know Lee Marvin mostly from Point Blank, you know, and that's kind of the, you know.
Yeah,
the big thing I think of.
But yeah, to see like a young Lee Marvin here, just being intimidating and lanky, and just he's like the real threat of the gang. He's the guy that they actually have to take out really quickly to get rid of him. Ernest Borgnine here as this gleeful fucking bully who enjoys being a fucking bully and a piece of shit, and fucking watching
that scene in the little diner, you know, where you know, they serve chili with beans. So what else do you have? Chili without beans.
Right. Well, yeah. No, it's another amazing piece of dialogue. Like, there's so much great stuff in this. Like, the dialogue. And then Ernest Borgnine comes in. Oh, you're sitting on my stool. And then Spencer Tracy moves over to the next stool. And then Ernest Borgnine sits on the stool and says, I don't like how this stool feels. And then Spencer Tracy finally gets fed up and is like, well, why don't you tell me where to sit? And
which is you know, when somebody, I mean, and that's a great response to that in that moment, right? Because it is, well, look, I'm not challenging you. You're doing this bullshit to me, and it's sort of like playing the room, right? It's sort of like, look, if you want to pretend like this is the thing you're fucking with me on, okay, you tell me where you want me to sit. It's funny how Spencer Tracy is sort of the Western hero, quote unquote. He has this. He's not going to sweat the small stuff, right? He's like, look, you want to come and be the big swinging dick? Come be the swinging dick. I don't give a shit. I'm, you know, I'm 60 years old. I just fought. You think this guy is like at that age, and he just came back from the fucking war, and you think about like we don't really get any context into who this guy is and his history, But you got to think this guy probably fought in the First World War. He's lived a full life. You don't even really know his background. You don't know what he does for a living. He's just a guy who's trying to pay his respects to the man who saved his life.
You get the sense that this guy, the way he talks, you get the sense he has money.
Yeah.
So he is ready to retire. He says that much in the movie. I was ready to just escape from humanity and go to some tropic island and live the rest of my life there, right? But I owed it to Komoko or whatever to bring this medal back from his son and give it to him. And then he runs into the situation where Komoko's dead and is, well, I'm not going to fucking step away. I'm not going to step back. And
but he like once he's almost run off the road by Ernest Borgnine, and his response is, "Look, I've done my. I mean, I'm going to leave." He was trying to leave. I don't know if his plan was I'm going to come back with some reinforcements or what. I mean, you kind of imagine maybe it was because of kind of the way the film ends.
But
he's not itching for a fight here. That's the thing. He's kind of forced into it, and I think that's the interesting thing. When you see him, he picks his battles, and he really only fights when he has
right.
To. This is a very not Western hero kind of thing to do.
Yeah.
Your traditional Western hero, particularly in '55. Any slight, I'm just gonna shoot you.
Yeah, yeah. No. It's a great character because he uses karate. He uses karate strikes in when he actually gets in a fight. So he actually comes from that tradition of non-confrontation. It's basically if someone comes at you, then you use that technique to fight them. Right? And he's kind of the ultimate fucking badass. But he's the non-confrontational ultimate badass because he doesn't take shit from anybody. But at the same time, he knows how to manipulate all these dumb toughs. He just talks his way around these people. Ernest Borgnine.
I love that he pulled he beats up Ernest Borgnine in the diner, and then pulls the knife out of his pocket and goes, "What? You're gonna stab me in the back?"
Right.
And then he talks to him and then just throws the knife away.
It's go ahead. I fucking dare you to pick that up and go after me.
This is a Western hero without a gun. Let's keep that in mind. At no point in this film does Spencer Tracy hold a gun.
Yep.
He makes a Molotov cocktail and burns the guy alive. But
apparently the source material for this, because I believe this was a novel of some sort. Apparently he does pull a gun at some point in the actual source material, from what I understand.
It's adapted from the short story "Bad Time at Honda" by Howard Breslin.
And they changed that because it was originally going to be called that as a film, but it would have conflicted with John Wayne's Hondo, which was released around the same time. but yeah, fucking. This performance from Spencer Tracy is just so great.
Yeah.
You just get sucked in, and you get sucked into the conversations he has. Like the sparring battles in this are so good. It feels like it's a slow burn, but all the time something's happening. There's a conversation.
There's that conversation he has with Robert Ryan where he's like, he can't get a ride, he can't get a Jeep, right? And he's just kind of sitting there, and he's basically just playing in the dirt,
Yeah.
And Ryan's like, I feel like a man is only as big as what makes him mad, and nothing around here seems big enough to make you mad. And that's a really good place to be, honestly. Is nothing around here is big enough to make me mad. And Spencer Tracy's response immediately seems like a lot makes you, it seems like you're mad all the time, right?
Yeah. What about Komoko? And then immediately he draws it out of him. Well, those Japanese are savages.
No. It's and yet it doesn't, especially for 55. It doesn't feel like an unsophisticated portrait of sort of the rabid racist, right?
Right.
This isn't a guy like wearing like a Klan hood or whatever. This is it feels like something. It feels like a guy you could know in your day-to-day life. It feels like in another circumstance, this guy you'd sit and you'd drink whiskey with him and everything would be fine, except he talks about fucking Japs, right?
I was going to bring this up. Both you and I come from very rural backgrounds. These are people we know growing up with in town. These are the locals. I mean, not all of them are just, dyed-in-the-wool Klan members. It's just kind of that sort of inborn kind of small town fear of strangers kind of thing.
And after Pearl Harbor, that's sort of like, the idea is, Kamoko moved into town a few months before Pearl Harbor. And then Pearl Harbor happened. And then his response is, man, you look at what these people did, and Corregidor, and, he's got, the Bataan March, and, all that sort of shit. And look at the terrible things the Japanese did, and, like, how can you defend these people? And, change the setting to 2004.
Yeah,
and,
it's like the same conversations coming
it's the
on,
same thing, like, come on, 9/11 happened, and, like, look at these fucking people throwing gay people off of buildings, and how can you think that these brown people are... It's the same fucking thing. This hasn't changed, Yep,
it's the same mentality, and they just those people again have a voice in 2017. It's exactly the same bullshit. Yeah, it's very disheartening.
Right,
but we're in 2018. Maybe
the more things change, the more they stay the same, right?
Yeah.
The eternal xenophobia, built around this, anyway.
Yeah.
We don't need to. The film. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that even though there are no like people of color in the film, it's a more sophisticated portrait of the kind of racism and where it comes from than most other films of the period. And even today, today you'd make him essentially a sort of a hardcore neo-Nazi or something.
Right?
Like but the film is smarter than that. It knows that that's not really what's going on, and I think that's one of the elements that I really like in the film.
Yeah, no, this is one of the smartest and one of just the best put together kind of noir / westerns I've seen ever. Like everything here is on point. All the characters are great. All the acting is fucking great. There's not a bad performance in this at all. If anything, the only sort of negative is that Anne Francis' character doesn't get enough to do.
Yeah,
and kind of just like ends up a victim of the struggle of a bunch of dudes.
Well, she makes her decision. One of the things. If there's a noir element of the film, and it kind of there's a genre mixing aspect, and I think the Anne Francis character is the best way.
Femme fatale, yeah.
Where she starts off as sort of the Western girl, right? Sort of like the idea is she's going to be the supportive female character to the hero, sort of thing. And then in the end, she ends up being the femme fatale. And she dies for her sin, and she's one of the few characters who actually dies in the film.
Yeah,
and so then you can make the misogyny argument. I don't know. It's not worth really going into in detail.
Yeah, I'm honestly not doing that. I'm just saying it's kind of funny that 55. Oh, the female character, kind of a throwaway, but at the same time, it's like
gets one of the great moments in the film, honestly, because she gets to be the person who realizes too late that she's throwing her lot with the wrong team.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah, exactly. She gets that realization, and that's also really great for just solidifying what an evil piece of shit Robert Ryan is, because he goes the extra mile. I got to kill you too because you're.
Well, and I love his response. I love his idea. Is like McCready told me.
Yeah,
my one mistake was letting two people live. Like, God, fuck you, man.
Yeah, and McCready has his number too, because in the bar scene where he ends up fighting Ernest Borgnine, he's how many other your guys are going to fall under your how many of these other guys you're going to kill afterwards? If you kill me and get rid of me. When are you going to kill Ernest Borgnine? When are you going to kill Lee Marvin? Because all these guys are fucking. They're going to break. They're going to crack, and they're going to fucking tell on you eventually.
Well, and that's a strategy, honestly. If you find yourself in this situation, draw the divisions between these fuckers, and make them kind of fight each other is actually a really good strategy. It doesn't really play out in the film that way.
Yeah, that's the thing.
The film doesn't. But that's that's definitely a thing. Like, these kinds of things are held together by the most tenuous threads of self-interest. And the second Borgnine thinks it's not going to be in his best interest to keep playing for Robert Ryan, he's going to sing like a canary, motherfucker.
Right, yeah. Yeah, Ernest Borgnine would have been the first one. Well, actually, the guy at the train station, he would have been the first guy to
squeal. You get a feeling he feels bad about it, but not so bad he's not going to do whatever he's kind of told to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and the sheriff, you can tell he's conflicted and he knows, but at the same time he's a drunk and a coward. And
I think the sheriff, my read on the sheriff is that he's chosen not to know. Like
that's the thing, because his dialogue, it's like, why don't you tell me what happened? Like, yeah. So
I mean, he knows there's something fishy. He knows the guy was killed. He knows that fire was not set, on accident. I mean, don't they say something like some kids set the fire or something?
Right?
Like that?
Yeah, they say he was sent to the internment camp, and then a bunch of kids.
It's sort of one of those. The production design is kind of telling a story, and the script is in some ways telling a different story. Like, I think we're supposed to think this town is a little bit more than just a fuel depot for the train, right?
Well, I mean, you get the you look at the town, and this is another thing in production, by the way. They originally wanted more people as extras in the town, but they felt like there was too many people, and even then, even when you watch it as it is, it feels like there's too many people in this town because there's like 5 buildings in the fucking town. But you get the idea that this is sort of the central hub of like a bunch of farms and other things that are,
they even say that in the hotel. The whole thing is like, well, we keep a bunch of rooms for the ranchers to come in, and
right.
Basically, the harvest comes in and they spend like a bunch of money just coming and pampering themselves. And so
Yeah.
you kind of get the feeling maybe there's, once a year we get a big, not tourist trade, but we get the farmers coming in. And, I mean, really in a traditional Western to be a whorehouse, right? Like that's the whole thing,
kind of honestly surprised that's not in here.
I mean, I think it would just be a distraction from the point of the film at this point.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
But I think it also kind of plays on that. This is sort of a Western and sort of a noir. Because in a noir film, it would be sort of the hotel that's sort of at the center of everything, where people are kind of coming and going. It would kind of feel so, and it does kind of become a central location. And God, some of the deep focus like shots in that hotel lobby area where you get basically Sturges. I mean, from a modern perspective, again, I think it's easy to overlook just how kind of sophisticated the framing is, but the idea of Sturges frames it. He uses the widescreen format to his best. I'd hate to see a pan and scan version of this film, by the way, but he uses the frame so he can just put everybody there and let them all talk, and we can just watch the thing unfold. So there's a little bit of a kind of a proscenium kind of staging there,
Yeah, and apparently this was shot in both. Like it was shot in 4:3, and then it was widescreen as well. And apparently the widescreen was not released for like a long fucking time. Apparently, for the longest time, all you could get was 4:3 for this, because they weren't sure how they wanted to release this film originally. Apparently,
I didn't. This is something I actually did not know. I'd actually like to see the 4:3 then, because it sounds like what they did was they basically shot it anamorphic then, where they shot a sort of so you just get like extended ceilings and floors,
right?
And the sort of and then so. Basically, you have this kind of widescreen with just sort of like a bunch of empty space where, but no, this is a film. I mean, clearly it lives in 16:9. I mean, there's just there's no, you get why. I mean, everybody who listens to this podcast knows I'm a big Paul Thomas Anderson fan, right? Like,
yeah.
You look at some of the compositions and like There Will Be Blood and like some of the compositions in this, and it's the same fucking thing. He's just, advanced it and kind of made it his own again. But I mean, even the shot of the sheriff kind of lying on the cot in the jail.
I love how he's essentially he's a permanent resident of his own drunk tank.
Yeah, he just kind of hangs out in the jail. I mean, look, this is I mean, a tiny town like this. I mean, he's the sheriff. He gets paid to just keep the order, but like, what the fuck is he gonna do? I mean, he isn't really in charge. He's not really doing his.
He doesn't want trouble. We had trouble 4 years ago. I don't want it again.
His job is to look the other way.
Yeah,
he gets paid to look the other way, and that pays his booze budget. And what else are you gonna? I mean, what is he gonna do?
But I mean, the best thing is the performances really suss it out, where you get a 3-dimensional feel for the character, where the sheriff feels really ashamed and bad about the fact that he's a piece of shit. You've
got to ask yourself, like, was he an alcoholic before this happened?
Right. Yeah.
Like, and maybe that's the thing that kind of, again, today we would get a conversation, that explained everything. And I'm not even saying that kind of depth is necessarily bad, but the beauty of this era, the beauty of an 81-minute film in 1955 is like we don't need it. We can just sort of question it and just kind of go along, and it can kind of exist in the viewer's mind, kind of defining this, But it's also like, well, okay, we got the drunk and the sheriff, and these are like stereotypes and caricatures to a degree. They're not one note and they're not two dimensional. They're given life by the performers.
That's the thing. These are stock noir and Western characters, but there's just so many great actors in this film, and they're all given time to do something. Just like Lee Marvin doesn't have that many lines, but physically, he's amazing in this film, where you get a total sense of his character and what he's about, and he's so fucking good. Robert Ryan is so fucking menacing as this sort of, hey, how you doing kind of bad guy who's trying to, get into your mind and find out what the fuck you're about and how he can manipulate that. Ernest Borgnine is like quintessential fucking big screen bully in this film. Everybody here is fucking just sort of firing off on all cylinders for the most part, and they take those sort of stock characters and they just...
There's not a weak performance, and that's kind of the thing.
No,
and the film doesn't wear at its welcome with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Every scene has a purpose and has a definite beginning and end to sort of like move us forward in this narrative. It's
right.
It's probably overkill to say it's propulsive, because it's not like I'm not like kind of on the edge of my seat watching it, but it's definitely doing something where it's really trying to sort of tell this story in the most economical way, and a greater emphasis on a sort of psychological complexity or on sort of backstory would just take away from that purity of that spirit, because ultimately, the whole thing is, MacReady doesn't know anything more about this town than what he sees.
Mm-hmm.
And the town doesn't know anything more about MacReady than what they see. And so ultimately, we as an audience are sort of left in this sort of mutual dark on that. Like, it doesn't matter. What matters is what these people do, rather than, sort of the motivation.
Yeah, we're drunk.
The film basically, the whole thing, the opening credit sequence happens, and then MacReady gets off the train, and then the film ends with him getting back on the next train.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is, Bad Day at Black Rock is a literal title. He spends one day in Black Rock, and it's a bad day, and then he leaves, and that's all we need to know. It's done.
The viewer gets all their suspicions and conjecture from MacReady and the townspeople. Like, you go back and forth between their perspectives, and you go along with them, and that's the thing. The movie draws you along with them, and it's not one of those sort of tense, nail-biting kind of thrillers. It is slow in the sense that it sort of moves at its own pace, but it does draw you along because you want to fucking know, and you're constantly guessing with these characters about what the fuck's going on. And then once you finally get to it where it's like, oh shit, okay, I know what's going on now, then you just want to see fucking Spencer Tracy fuck these people up and get some justice. And he does. Robert Ryan falls to a ironic fate. He gets burnt alive just like Komoko does, but he survives it. And
Molotov cocktail as well, which is, you gotta, you watch Spencer Tracy in a movie set in late 1945, make a Molotov cocktail, and you think, how many of those did you make in Italy? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, and
this seems to be something he knows how to do very quickly. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, and that's a great physical performance too, because he's got to use one arm to do that shit. And and you're right. Again, his mannerisms, just where he Spencer Tracy's just such a great actor, where I'm going to act around the fact that I only have one arm. And he does it. Like, everything he does, just the little things he fucking does is so fucking good. Apparently, with the Molotov cocktail scene, originally John Sturges wanted him to just strike a match. But apparently Spencer Tracy couldn't do it with one arm. So it was like, I need a lighter. I need a fucking lighter to light this shit. I was like, all right, we'll give him a lighter. Because apparently that was kind of authentic anyway. Like, apparently everybody sort of came back from World War II was accustomed to using lighters, I guess.
Yeah.
Apparently that was a thing. I don't know, but
matches get wet in the rain, right?
Yeah.
I can imagine. I don't know. That might be historically, like, that's when people started carrying lighters instead of matchbooks around. So
yeah. So both of us kind of highest recommendation for this film.
If you've gotten this far and you're like, maybe I don't want to see this film, why are you listening to this podcast?
Yeah.
It's a classic. It's one of the. I mean, it's almost, it's not that the film isn't a masterpiece. It's not that the film isn't like amazing, but it's almost one that I want people to have not listened to this and see. I want it to hit people. I want it to really kind of become like a thing, because I think, I do love the film. I don't think it's, I want the film to hit even harder than it does. I want it to be even more overt than it is. I want it to kind of be, but it's not. In 1955, it couldn't be, right?
Yeah.
But it really sneaks up on you, particularly, if you see it once and you're kind of, I don't know. Watch it again. Give it 6 months and watch it again. It's worth a watch and it's worth a rewatch. And
I think it gets you thinking. Even the stuff it can't say and do, John Sturges was just that good of a director where you still get where he was going with this film. He's talking about some really deep problems in American society at the time that actually still sadly exist today. But he was hinting at a lot of stuff that you just couldn't overtly say back then. And this is definitely a movie
that's not unique. I think we might have implied it's sort of like a small town thing, not unique to small towns.
No. Yeah, it's a mentality. It's not, and that mentality is not, sort of it is not in one location. It's not just small town mentality. It's just the mentality. Couple little trivia things here I'll throw in.
Ernest money. That's one thing to know. Film made money. Budget
was $1.2 million and it made $3.7 million. So that's pretty fucking great for back then. You got to think the advertising didn't cost shit back then. So
Yeah. They don't do $20 million ad campaigns. They're like a third of the budget, Like the Star Wars movie is like $200 million film plus $200 million ad campaign,
Right.
No. Their ad campaigns were like posters and trailers.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's this new thing called TV, and maybe we'll the commercial on there. Maybe we'll advertise it, one time. Not in 55, they wouldn't even done that. It would have been like, this program was sponsored by Bad Day at Black Rock.
Yeah. No, Daniel, hadn't you heard TV is going to kill movies?
Yeah, no, there will be no more movies. Like, speaking in 1955, in like 10 years, there will be no such thing as a movie anymore. It's all going to be TV.
Yeah. The music was done by Andre Previn, by the way. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the score for this, honestly. Like, it's kind of
forgettable.
It's kind of like standard 50s, but at the same time, there's a little hint there of connective tissue. There's that sort of military kind of beat throughout.
I like that, like, kind of opening sequence music, like the sort of, and I also like. This is one of the things. A movie, again, a Western in 55. Like this sort of traditional thing, like High Noon, where you have the theme song that explains everything in the film. Not something they did for this, which betrays it sort of like a noirish, sort of leanings, but also gives it that sort of like we don't really know where things are going. Can you imagine this film started with he came from out of nowhere. He needs a hotel room to stay. It's I apologize to our listeners for my terrible like improvised lyrics and performance there. But
a man with one arm chopped, Ernest Borgnine in the neck,
and in the end, Anne Francis dies.
Yeah, that would have. Oh God, I'm glad they didn't do that. So Ernest Borgnine did do his own stunts in this. Spencer Tracy didn't do his fight stunts because apparently he hit too hard.
I kind of love that. Love that. Yeah,
it's not a joke. Apparently, he went to Sturges and said, "If I do my own stunts, I'm going to hit these people too hard." So Sturges is like, "Okay, well, we'll do a stunt double for you then." Apparently, even then, I think the stunt double actually broke Ernest Borgnine's nose when he did the knee lift to his head.
Oh, I believe it. I mean, that whole sequence looks like it fucking hurts, right? I mean,
yeah. But
we're not fucking around at that point.
No. But Borgnine did his own stunts for the crash through the door. Apparently, he was expecting it to swing open, but Sturges had it nailed shut, and it was Borgnine's own momentum that took him through that fucking door.
Right. That's kind of astonishing. Also, again, another Sturges thing. I mean, Sturges is the next year, and yet we still get a shot through the door, which we always think of. I mean, today that's always a Sturges reference, but this predates that, and yet is. I mean, as much as I love that moment in the Searchers, it's sort of the better moment, right? It's
and just Borgnine trying to collect himself, and he's still stuck in the door with his feet and shit, and he's got to step out of it and shit. Apparently, Borgnine never forgave him for that. Apparently,
I don't blame Sturges for doing it, and I don't blame Borgnine for never forgiving him. Honestly, that's on that.
Yeah. So, although Spencer Tracy was drinking heavily at this point, he was a full-blown alcoholic. Apparently, he didn't drink while he was shooting. He sort of reserved that for after the day was done for shooting. Sure. So apparently he was always inviting people up to his hotel after shooting to have some cocktails. Although apparently he was mostly drinking 7-Up at the time when he was inviting people to his hotel room. But Ernest Borgnine was saying it was too damn hot to party during the day. And even though they shot in I think July. For where they were shooting, it tried to avoid the 125 degree Fahrenheit heat. They were still getting upwards of 100 at that point.
Oh, so, I know.
Yeah.
That area, California, no, that's. I mean, that's. I don't even want to be there in July, much less have to do anything productive.
Yeah. And just another thing to mention: Lee Marvin, Ernest Borgnine, and Robert Ryan would co-star in The Dirty Dozen in '67. So. You get that little connection there. A bunch of great character actors just sort of coming together again in another film. But I think that's about it.
I'm done. I feel like we covered it. I feel like we did. I loved the episode we did on High Noon where we kind of did the alternate reading on it.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to do an alternate reading. I could give you the fast reading if you want to know the racist reading on this. I could do that. But I kind of don't want that to be a part of this episode.
Well, this feels like the High Noon where,
it is what it is.
Spencer Tracy is actually the good guy.
Spencer Tracy is the good guy. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. So I feel like I want to just leave it there. But,
let's leave it there. So Daniel, tell people where they can find you on the interwebs.
Before I do that, I do want to apologize. I do have a little bit of a cold, and hopefully that didn't come across too hard in the recording here. I've been muting the microphone and coughing when I needed to, so apologies.
It sounded more gruff and more like a man.
Yeah, which is clearly a thing that I care about for this podcast.
Yeah,
it's really
the theme of this podcast. Yeah.
Squarely in the I'm going to beat up Spencer Tracy in a bar. I'm the Ernest Borgnine of this podcast. Anyway, go check me out on Twitter. I'm at Daniel Lee Harper. Everything I do goes up there. I do a podcast called Wrong with Authority, which is a podcast about movies, about history, and the history those movies are about. We just put up an episode called, I forget what I called it, but it's about Inherit the Wind,
right?
Which also stars Spencer Tracy.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that with my 3 British friends, all of whom have been on this podcast. So I edited that episode, and I think it's pretty good. So go check it out. It's a worthy conversation about Spencer Tracy, and that movie was made in 1960. I mean, it's funny that we're doing them so kind of back to back, in terms of because we recorded it a while ago, but I finally edited it and put it up. And yeah, if you like us talking about Spencer Tracy, go check out Wrong with Authority 6 because we have a lot to say about that film as well, and its sort of place in history in the Scopes Monkey trial. And my British friends all fuck with me about my history and researching creationism, so go check that
out. And you're bringing Oi Spaceman back too soon, aren't you?
I think that's happening. We were gonna record, and then I just got tired. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll have some new episodes where I'm dipping my toes back into actually putting out productive product. And I know this is like sort of bad juju. That's something you're not supposed to say, but I think I'm gonna end up starting a Patreon, try to get some money out of putting out stuff for people to listen to and read. And I'm going to start writing again too. And that might end up being something that ends up being more of a big project. I mean, it's probably a book, but we'll probably end up publishing it somewhere and like kind of in progress. But that's the thing I've been working on in 2017. But it's 2018 now, and it's time to buckle down and start writing. So, more stuff is coming from me. I've been a little bit reclusive in 2017, but that's because I've got big things coming down the pike. So
there you go. Yeah.
But yeah, go follow me on Daniel Lee, at Daniel Lee Harper on Twitter. That's kind of where I am more than I'm not. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me if you want to say hi.
Cool. And you can find us at tmbdos.podbean.com. You can find all our links there to our YouTube, iTunes / Apple Podcasts, and our Facebook. Go to our Facebook group. They Must Be Destroyed on Sight on Facebook. That's the single best way to get in contact with us, find out what's going on with the podcast, and that's basically the best place. Leave comments, leave suggestions for movies for us to watch and all that shit. Next episode is going to be our best first-time watches of 2017. I put it out on the Facebook for people to leave their lists. One person has done so far. I'm going to reiterate this, that if you want to leave it on the Facebook page, you can do so, because we don't get enough traffic on the Facebook page where I'd lose it, so I can definitely easily find it on the wall if you want to do that. But basically, your top 10.
Or you can tweet it at us, DM us, do whatever. Like, if one gets it, we will talk about it. It's fine.
If you want to email it to me, hoagley.reviews@gmail.com. I'll just leave the link in the show notes. Also, if you don't want to write a list, if you want to leave an MP3 recording of your best films, first-time watches for 2017. So, of course, it could be anything that you've watched in 2017. It could be a movie from 1921 or whatever, as long as it's a first-time watch.
If you saw Nosferatu for the first time in 2017, after we recorded on it, and want to talk about that in an MP3 format and say that was the one good film you saw in 2017, we will play your audio on our show.
Exactly, yeah. You don't have to have a top 10 list. It doesn't have to be a top 5. It could be 3 films. One film, whatever you want to talk about.
Anything you liked or didn't like. I think that's another thing. Like, worst of is also acceptable. Yeah, hey, I saw Austin Powers for the first time in 2017, and dear God, is that movie a piece of shit? Completely reasonable thing to play for us.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the thing. The show, we have our lists, and we're going to talk about them, of course.
And we check it twice, but we're going to tell you if you're not already nice.
Yeah,
next week on this podcast.
But yeah, we're looking forward to listener contributions here to basically make this show a bit more interesting and have some more conversations coming out. So
basically, Lee and I are not nearly interesting enough to hold the audience. So
it's true.
We want you to come on and be more interesting.
That's right.
For us to get more listeners. Although we don't have a Patreon for this, so there's no money being made here. It's just for an ego boost. That's all it is.
Yeah. But I will remind everybody listening to this on the Facebook page. I'm going to push it hard to try to get some people to throw their lists at us if they so do desire. And until then, we will see you guys next time. Thank you very much, Daniel, for joining me tonight.
This has been great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
as always.
And
this is honestly something. I mean, we didn't record that many episodes in 2017, but this is one of those just fun things I look forward to whenever we're gonna do it. It's a blast. So
yeah,
I enjoy it.
And thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for your continued support. Last year, all you guys were great. All the comments and all the thumbs up and all that bullshit on Facebook. And look forward to more of that in 2018. Our first episode of 2018 is now in the books, and we will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For more episodes, links to our Apple Podcast site, YouTube, and our Facebook group, as well as other websites and podcasts of similar interests, please visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com. Thank you. Drive through, filth